Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul. Tammi Mac, Tammi Mac, yeah. Who that? Tammi Mac, hey. So you know it's Tammi Mac, hey. Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. I'm Tammi Mac, everybody. Tonight we're talking about the passing of Texas's controversial abortion bill. Why the last survivor, I'm sorry, I just had to think right there. That's why I moved out of Texas. I cannot deal with Texas. Why the last survivor of the Tulsa massacre was asked to recount the tragic events of that day, and what Pose star Billy Porter revealed to Tamron Hall on her show this week. It's Friday. It's Friday, everybody. And that means it's time for another round of the political and trending highlights of the week. Please welcome my Friday co-host, the co-founder of the Anti-Racism Kentucky Coalition, Dr. O.J. Oleka, comedian and filmmaker Alicia Cooper, activist and radio personality Dominique DePrima, and of course, political analyst Ed Sanders is here. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Y'all ready for the weekend or what?
Yep, I'm going to Vegas.
Oh, okay. You're gonna be up in Vegas doing a little comedy thing?
No, I'm no work, but I'm scared to gamble because they're gonna try to get the whole year of COVID out my pocket that they lost.
They're gonna take all your unemployment.
All my extra $300 a week.
All your stimulus. All your stimulus. See, this is why people like Dr. Oleka says y'all shouldn't have that unemployment and that stimulus.
Yeah.
You spend it all on gambling.
That's right.
Yeah,
Dr.
that's
Oleka,
right.
I think I'm moving back to your side slowly but surely here. Slowly but surely. Let's get into it. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has officially made it illegal in his state for women to receive an abortion after as early as 6 weeks, which is before most women even realize that they're pregnant. While signing the highly controversial bill into law, Governor Abbott stated the life of every unborn child with a heartbeat will be saved from the ravages of abortion. Check this out.
Of children lose their right to life every year because of abortion. In Texas, we work to save those lives. And that's exactly what the Texas legislature did this session. They worked together on a bipartisan basis to pass a bill that I'm about to sign that ensures that the life of every unborn child who has a heartbeat will be saved from the ravages of abortion.
Until that heart is beating inside of a black man and he is pulled over by the cops, then doesn't really matter all that much, right? Ed, let's go.
Hey, I think you said it just right. It's part of this coordinated effort, right, by conservatives to try to overturn Roe v. Wade. And clearly they're pressing forward in Texas. I think there were a couple provisions in this that raise eyebrows. As always, if there's not a provision there even to deal with rape or incest, I look right at it like it's in a bad shape. But then there's also a provision there where everyday citizens can sue those that help the abortion. And so it's really designed to help put pressure on healthcare providers and those that furnish the services. I think it's cold. I think in Texas, there's something like 56,000 abortions a year. So it's not a small number of people that are seeking these services. These are services that help families to make proper family planning decisions. And I think in this way, the governor's been cruel.
Well, I mean, look, on this, I have a difference of opinion. Obviously, I am a conservative. I consider myself to be pro-life. But let me make this statement very clear. I think you can be pro-life without being mean about it, without being angry about it. I think some of the things that I might have done differently in this bill, I think rape and incest, I think changing the provisions, at least making that very explicit and very clear what those things are, I think is important. But also, I would have liked to have seen some things in this bill that make it very clear that we support women who choose life. And what I mean by that is offering financial assistance, particularly for low-income women, for prenatal and for neonatal care, for making it clear that there's going to be additional financial resources for teenagers so they understand the consequences of having sex. Obviously, pregnancy could be one of those things. And then also providing resources for families who choose to adopt and for women who make that choice. I mean, again, look, I am a pro-life individual, but I think we can do this in a way that is more comprehensive and allows us to be on offense in a way that can bring people over to our side and to the cause.
Sounds like you might be agreeing a little bit with Joe Biden's American Families Plan in a little way there, huh?
Well, I don't think that the federal government should be spending as much money as possible, but I do think that states have an opportunity to step in here and really play a leading role. I mean, Ed's right. I mean, this is definitely an opportunity for conservatives with regard to Roe v. Wade. But I think if that's what happens, and there's no guarantee that it will, but if it does, we've got to do a better job of making sure that we have the resources for women who choose life and making it more of an option for people who currently don't think that it should be.
Alicia.
Well, we all know who this is really going to affect. This is really only going to affect low-income people, because if you have means, you can go to another state, go to another country, and still have an abortion. So it's not stopping much for people who have means. It's only going to affect low-income people. And it's, I feel like this is the bipartisan thing. Like, Democrats agreed to this. Okay, well, at the end of the day, it's still not going to have that much of an impact. Ed said 55,000 abortions. I want to see what the numbers are after this passes, because I don't think it's going to be that much of a drop. And like you said, Tammy, 6 weeks, some people still think it's indigestion. So this state who executed a man on the same day they passed this bill, this isn't about pro-life. This is just all politics.
Yeah, I find that rather interesting myself. Dominique?
Well, to Alicia's point, the semantics are interesting. You know, conservatives say they're pro-life. I think we're all pro-life. It's just which lives are important to you. If all lives matter, then okay. But that's not how it plays out. Not just to your point, Tammy, but really to what Dr. Oleka was talking about. Conservatives oftentimes are so quick to try to limit women's choices and their power over their own body and label that as pro-life. Meanwhile, they're cutting food stamps, they're cutting aid for children that are already here walking around and need resources for education, for mental health services coming out of this pandemic, and for plain old food. I mean, so I think, to me, I agree for once with Dr. Oleka. This, conservatives need to show that they care about the kids that are already here, by providing them with the services and the resources that they need to thrive and keep their hands off women's bodies.
What I can never understand for the life of me is how those that are against the government being involved in their lives, this seems to be the one time abortion seems to be the one time that the government wants to be all up in it. That confuses me to no end.
Yeah, there's a few times it's abortion. They want to be able to keep you from voting when they don't want you to vote, and they want to recount your votes unless they won, and then the voting machines are okay. So the nanny state and the interfering in our lives, it's really just a matter of when it's convenient for their agenda.
Well, I think we're conflating a few things here, but with regard to policy, if we're talking about pro-life, again, I think it is important to be consistent. As I laid out before, I think there are a number of ways that conservatives can lead on this. But when it comes to this particular policy, like I said, I'm pro-life. I think that what the governor said with regard to a heartbeat is true. That is accurate. But again, you don't have to be mean about it. And I think if you go about trying to provide resources, particularly financially and education, you can bring people over to this side, and you can be consistent with regard to being pro-life all across the board.
So you're against the death penalty for sure.
100%. Like I said, I'm pro-life.
Okay, so you're against the death penalty.
Well, I will take the hypocritical oath on that because I am obviously, I'm a woman, so not that all women are okay with abortions, but I am definitely pro-life, but I am also pro-abortion if that's your decision. I am definitely pro-choice, but on the opposite realm, I don't believe people should be sent to death row. So I'll take the hypocritical oath on that, because
but also, just like Dominique said, stay out of women's bodies, and it almost makes it feel like they're criminalizing women for getting pregnant and then having a choice to not keep the baby. What about the fact that it took two to tango? Why don't they put up there to put some men, and where's the reversible vasectomies? Why don't we get some of that going, and that'll help with the problem? But they always put everything on the woman, like it didn't take two to tango.
That's what I was just about to say, that, Alicia. It's interesting how the onus is always put on the woman when it comes to abortions. The man very much had something to do with that. So are we gonna have him have vasectomies so he doesn't have children anymore? Are we gonna get rid of this Viagra pill that floats around? I mean, we need to look into the man's body too.
Yeah,
Plus,
and
they say
Viagra
it's
is covered by the
bipartisan, but is it
insurance.
by gender? I mean, usually it's a group of men making these laws, and women should have more of a voice in these kinds of decisions about us.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Because I see Ed and Oleka quiet over there.
Quiet.
Women.
Let's hear from those sponsors, Tammi Mack.
We'll be right back.
Let's go to the soulmates.
We'll be right back.
Vasectomies.
Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. My Friday faves are here. Ed Sanders, Dr. O.J. Oleka, Alicia Cooper, and Dominique DePrima. Let's get into this chat. How about that? Let's see if I can get into it. Here we go. Therese, welcome. Welcome to the show, Therese. Tammy, Dominique, Alicia, OJ, and Ed. Happy Friday, y'all. Fox Soul. Woo, woo. Bruce Taylor. Let's go, Tammi Mack. I'm going. Okay. Crusher Owen says, happy Friday. TT says, yeah, Ed is here. Ed, you're getting a little fan base. You better tell these people you married.
You know, I was about to crack on Crusher. Crusher has his own crush on the show, remember?
Okay, that's right.
Redirect.
Metcalf Hottie says, Tammi Mack, the show has great content. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let's send a shout out and a thank you to our producers, Alicia Birch and Avi Bernard, and also our executive producer, Joyce, and James Dubose. But I have to shout out Kevin, who handles our text so well. I know you said the content, but without Kevin, you wouldn't see nothing. Yeah. Jason says, ask Governor Abbott how much he and his Republican crew are going to donate to each woman who knows she is incapable of raising a child. Interesting. Deborah Will. Hi, Tammi Mack. Hi, Ed, Alicia, Dr. Oleka, Dominique. The business of being Black. The white people are the ones they are really worried about. Their race is drying out. Oh, that's a good thought. Before we move on, I want to kind of touch on that a little bit, because Alicia, you said that this abortion bill is only going to affect poverty-stricken people and mainly Black and brown people. But what Deborah here is saying is that white people are afraid that white people gonna disappear.
Yeah, but this ain't gonna solve the
them.
problem. This is not gonna solve the problem, because there's a lot of race mixing going on. They helping keep more Black babies with these white people. So there's no formula for this. So just go head on and stay out of people's wombs.
$20 vasectomies. Let's go.
That's right. Vasectomy.com, freevasectomy.org.
Ed and Dr. Oleka know better. They know exactly what issues not to speak on. Women.
Well, they live with women, so smart men.
Very smart.
Happy wife, happy life.
And look,
Right.
Ed said best.
I love when single men go, I can't believe that they say happy wife, happy life. I would never. That's never. Okay. Yeah, right. Call me when you get married, brother. Call me when you get married. Earlier this week, House Rules Chairman Jim McGovern said Republican leader Kevin McCarthy was weak and cowardly for opposing an inquiry to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Now, in an interview with CNN's Aaron Burnett, he said, I think the only reasonable conclusion is that he's afraid of Donald Trump and he doesn't want to offend him, doesn't want to get disinvited to Mar-a-Lago. But it's sad and it's pathetic. So what do you guys think about the legislation? Will it make it to the Senate floor at all for a vote?
No, it's not going to get there. And I mean, I think the congressman's right about the House leader, and he is scared of Donald Trump, but it's not Donald Trump the politician; it's Donald Trump the base. And there is, the real issue. It's why January 6th happened in the first place, is that you've got this large base of people, one that would support Donald Trump by voting for him, but clearly another large group that would, send a crowd to the Capitol and ransack the Capitol. I mean, ironically, in this, the vote that occurred in the House, you have Mike Pence's brother, who's taken over his seat in Congress, voting against an investigation into a mob that was there to kill his own brother. And so, if that groupthink of that base is that strong, I don't know that the McCarthy is scared of Trump. He's scared, or he's representing that base. That's what you're saying.
Dominique.
Well, Tammi,
go ahead, Dr. Oleka.
Let me introduce some facts into this conversation as opposed to just the political perspective of this. Obviously, Jim McGovern is a Democrat. He wants the Democrats to keep the House, so he's certainly going to play politics. But here's the reality of the commission. And look, I support a commission. This particular bill, though, while the numbers might be even, 5-5, Democrats and Republicans, it gives significant power to the chair to get information as they would want to. It allows the Democrats to pick that chair. Who knows who Nancy Pelosi is going to pick? Last time she was in charge of a commission that was supposed to be bipartisan, she picked a wealthy donor from California who was in charge of the Democrat Party. I think what you see here is that the Senate Republicans in particular just don't trust Nancy Pelosi. Now, you can argue whether or not that's good or that's bad or whose fault that is. But the fact is they don't trust her. And so as a result, they don't trust that this commission is going to be fair. That is reasonable. That's a reasonable perspective. We need a good commission that is actually fair, that's totally bipartisan across the board, and I hope we get that instead of this particular bill.
Does the party of no have a suggestion on how to do that?
Sure. I think you do it the same way you did with the commission that came after the weapons of mass destruction confusion in Iraq that allowed us to get the information that we got. But I think what
you're making a suggestion, but we've never heard anything out of Mitch McConnell in that forward.
You actually have. One of the suggestions that was brought up that a lot of this bill admittedly has is to make sure that the numbers were fair and even, to make sure that the scope was going to be broader. That's another thing that Republicans are concerned about because, look, the another reality of this is that we have an uptick of political violence in this country. You look at when Steve Scalise was almost killed because there was a shooter who shot at the baseball game in 2017. You have former Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who was shot, I think, in 2014. We have an uptick of political violence. We ought to come together as a country to figure out how, why, and how to stop it. January 6th is certainly the biggest that we have seen, but it goes beyond that. So the request from the Republicans was make it broader, expand it, and actually make it fair across the board. This bill doesn't get there.
Yeah, that's just no to the House.
Wow.
The request from Republicans was distract and try to investigate Black Lives Matter instead of owning up to a domestic terror attack. And the thing that makes this seem so disingenuous to me is the fact that the same Republicans who were cowering under their desks and who were, Mitch McConnell was saying, this is Trump's fault. Now they've changed their tune. It was only a few months ago. Now all of a sudden they're lying and saying it was just a tourist attraction day at the Capitol. We have this on tape. We have armed people storming the Capitol. This is not just a broadening. This is, look at the shiny object. This is, the tap dancing man. I mean, even just that monologue you gave us right now, Dr. O.J. Oleka, they want to investigate everything. And I don't care if it was, Little Bo Peep and the Cat in the Hat. You guys wouldn't be happy with an investigation because they don't want to have to talk about January 6th during the midterm elections. And they don't want to have to talk about it during the midterm elections with a whole list of facts that have been brought out by a commission. The Democrats are in charge. So guess what? They're going to be in charge of the commission. Nancy Pelosi is the speaker. Deal with it. We need a commission and we need to get to the bottom of this particular terror attack. We can look at everything else in its own separate commission. You guys don't get to throw in everything but the kitchen sink.
And they don't want a commission because so many of them were complicit in the things that were going on. So they don't want to be found out as well. It's just absolutely ridiculous. These are the same people who beat Benghazi into the ground. And now all of a sudden they don't want to do anything about this. We see what it is. They were complicit and they don't want you to be able to prove it. and it's obvious. So we hear you, Dr. Oleka, but that's not, no, we know what's really going on with these people. They are a part of it. They don't want to lose power, and they're willing to do anything to hold on to it.
I just think Marjorie Taylor Greene's probably going to end up being the front runner in the primary for Republican.
Let someone else is.
Worry now.
I mean, she's picking up a lot of steam here.
So you're saying she's the poster girl for the Republican Party? Is that what you're saying? I don't think it's going to like that.
She's not. I mean, if she's the poster girl of the Republican Party, then Andrew Cuomo, your favorite Democrat, is the poster boy of the Democrats. I mean, there can be people who do bad things who are not representative of the party, unless you want to prop up Andrew Cuomo, who is the governor of one of the largest states, who the media propped up as the replacement for Joe Biden. He's responsible for more deaths in nursing homes.
Cuomo.
Now we got a report that his brother, Chris Cuomo, who's supposed to be an impartial member of the media, was advising him on how to respond to some of these things. If you want to talk about some improprieties and unethical happenings within major parties,
January 6th,
you can talk about Andrew Cuomo.
What we're talking about. We're talking about
what
January
we're talking
6th.
about is people
Cuomo
who represent
has
the party.
problems, but what we're talking about is January 6th. What does Cuomo have to do with that? You just don't want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's indicative of the direction that the party is going. Totally out of touch with reality, denial of actual provable facts, and sort of this weird like QAnon fantasy land that, you know, is really, really problematic for our democracy.
Well, again, I would reject that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the face of the Republican Party. This was the comment that was made, and so that's what I was responding to suggest if Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is not the face of the party, is going to get headlines, then you also have to look at Andrew Cuomo, who is in fact
what does he have to do with January 6th?
He kind of went away, though. I haven't heard much about Cuomo. He kind of went away a little bit.
He's not.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has no power in the House.
Governor.
He has no authority, whereas Andrew Cuomo used the power of the state to ensure that people died. If we're talking about what issues are more significant,
let's talk about Richard Nixon. If we're just going to bring up random disgraced,
we're not bringing up
Democrats
random people.
And Republicans.
I've already explained
Let's talk
the thread.
About Nixon.
I have already explained the thread why Andrew Cuomo is relevant to the conversation because we're talking about.
Well, I think Nixon is relevant because it goes to the roots of the lying tendencies of the Republican Party. I mean, we can all stretch, Dr. Oleka, but what we're talking about is the January 6th commission to investigate a domestic terror.
Well, to be fair to Dr. Oleka, I did bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene, so that was my fault.
Yeah, but she was part of that insurrection.
Charlotte,
and she's a conspiracy theorist loon.
Did you say loon? Okay. Tell us how you really feel, Alicia. Charlotte Rose, great, our soulmate, says they are putting their eggs in a basket of a soon convicted former president, and they had a chance for a commission when they were in power. This wasn't on the agenda today, but since our soulmate brought it up, do we believe that the former president will be convicted? Honestly,
I don't. We've said it. We've talked about it before. I'm not super optimistic that he's gonna be found guilty. But I think we'll see. We'll see.
So many charges to choose from. I mean, are we talking state? Are we talking federal? Are we talking?
Alicia's headed to Vegas. We should see if there's odds on it somewhere. Place some bets.
Okay. Let's see. Hybrid says it's not white people who are becoming darker, but black people who are becoming lighter and lighter over time. I don't even know what show you watching right now.
The race mixing part back in the abortion race mixing.
Oh, my bad, Hybrid. Okay. That was a hybrid conversation happening. Okay, you're getting deep on us, Hybrid. Do you like that topic? The average African American is 76% black and 20% white. They're already almost 25% not black, while most white people are like 95% white. Whoa, you're getting real deep on us there, my bro. Bruce Taylor says they don't want this commission because names will be named. And it would be a wrap for a whole host of these people. The good doctor is tap dancing on the Tammi Mack Late Show. Dr. Oleka, you're the only doctor on the show.
Well, that's true, but none of us are tap dancing, so I don't know who he's talking about. But I will say it again. The facts of the matter are this. Republicans do not trust Nancy Pelosi. We can argue whether or not that's fair or if it's not. I mean, Dominique is correct. She is the speaker. This is how power and politics work. But it doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden going to go along with how she set up the rules within this commission. Again, I think a commission is good. I think this particular bill is flawed. And I think that is why Ed is correct, that it's not actually going to get a vote in the Senate. And if it does, it's certainly not going to pass.
Well,
that's why I'm sick and tired
commercial
of
right now. We'll be right back on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. 170-year-old Tulsa massacre survivor Viola Fletcher testified before members of Congress about the horrors of that day. We're going to take a look at that clip.
Black men seen being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot.
107 years old. She remembers it crystal clear. One of 3 survivors to testify. Let's talk about the importance of remembering what happened to the residents of Tulsa, of this Tulsa massacre. Alicia?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I'm glad that there are 3 survivors, because you have people try to downplay it or say it didn't happen or it didn't happen the way it's written down in history. And to have these 3 people, and this lady in particular, that is Black grown woman magic, that she's 107 years old. She's still reading. She's still seeing. She still has her wits about her. And that's nothing but God. And I'm just so glad that we were able to hear it firsthand from her. But I'm sorry that she had to experience that and even go through that. But the country owes the families and those 3 survivors reparations, because that was just completely inhumane. And they would give it to anybody else because they deserve it.
Dr. Oleka.
One of the things that she said, I think we need to key in on because it's incredibly important. She said, I can still hear the planes overhead. This was the only time in American history where you had a domestic terror attack that used planes. I mean, this was war. This Black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma was destroyed purely because of racism, purely. And they used every weapon they had at their disposal, including the weapons that you would use in an all-out war and assault. It is one of the most important events in American history. It's one of the saddest individual occurrences in our history. And I'm also very thankful that she was able to tell this story, but this is something that kids need to learn in schools. I didn't learn this until I was out of college. So you can imagine how many people wouldn't have the interest or would have no understanding of this. This needs to be taught in schools, in U.S. history. Every kid needs to know it.
I'm sure that's laughable to the state of Texas. Dominique?
Yeah, so much to unpack here. I mean, the fact that she was 7 years old and she literally had to wait 100 years to tell her story. 100 years. Imagine waiting 100 years for anything.
Imagine living 100 years.
Right. And what struck me too is that she described her life as a child and how she was in a middle class or upper middle class family with a business and a school and a church. And then in one instant of racist white mob violence, her whole life changed. And she had to spend the rest of her life as a domestic servant, working for those white families who stole those businesses, who stole that land, who raised those homes to the ground. 1,200 businesses and churches and homes. So think about the generational wealth in this country when we as Black people are constantly blamed for not being business savvy or being lazy or all the reasons that they give why we don't have generational wealth. And imagine the impact of 100 years of 1,200 businesses and all of those families with their children being educated and having the wealth and the resources that they would have had. What a difference that would make for Black America. Just that one incident. And believe me, there are others like it.
Yeah. Dr. Oleka, I want to make myself clear here because I wasn't digging at you. When you said we should be learning about it in school, I was kind of digging at Texas and a couple of other states who are considering not even talking about racism in schools. So that's why I said that, because I mean, really, other than Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, I don't think there are many curriculums that include things of this nature in our school systems in anywhere in America, including colleges and universities. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I listen. I think this is the ultimate expression of Jim Crow, right? And you know the anniversary that has come up, and certainly the elevation of this particular event is important in that conversation. You know, I know at the end of the month you've got a documentary that's coming out that was produced by Russell Westbrook and a couple others on the topic, and should be fairly interesting to read. But you know, like Dr. Oleka said, this wasn't a topic that I learned in primary or secondary school, and only peripherally in college. And I went to an HBCU. You know, this is a topic that I studied later. And to put it in further context, you also need to look at the other race riots throughout the country, throughout the Midwest, the vast number of them that occurred. And so when I say that this is the largest expression of Jim Crow, that's what this is. And for folks to understand what the civil rights movement is about, and the type of oppression that African Americans are trying to lift off their back, you know, you have to understand how and why this occurred, because it happens every day. To OJ's point about sort of the militarization and the use of force against that community, that's what we're fighting about now, with how use of force and how acceptable it is for, you know, law enforcement and others to do harm to us. And it all starts with you know, the Jim Crow era, the slavery era, and understanding how people in this country, specifically white people, have treated our communities.
Great point. This is not the only time that a massacre in America has happened. This is just the more popular time, or the more popular massacre that has happened on American soil with Black people. Therese says, I love Nancy Pelosi, but she's not going to be around much longer wearing those 10-inch stripper shoes. Therese also says,
try not to laugh.
Right. Come on. It's funny. It's funny. I'm sorry. It's funny. Give her the reparation she deserves today. My grandmother. Oh, hold on. It's kind of confused. So we're about to go back to the stripper shoes again. Cecilia says to Therese, my grandmother could wear stilettos in her 70s and 80s. It's us younger ones getting worse bodies trying to live European. Deborah Will, thanks for bringing us back. Wow, that's amazing. And people need to know the truth. On just that alone, we need our reparations now. And Charlotte agrees with most of us on the panel. I had to learn about this on my own, one of America's bloody stains. I'm sure though, Dominique, you didn't have to, I mean, because you come from a family that was heavily involved into the political world as well as social consciousness. So how old were you when you found out about this massacre? Because I'm sure it was something you knew long before any of us on this panel.
It's funny because I feel like I don't remember not knowing, but what I did not know until much, much later when I was already out of college was about those planes dropping bombs. I knew it was a riot where white people went through and burned up everything and killed over 300 of us, but I didn't realize they were dropping bombs from the air. And you know, that's the only time in our history that that's happened. I mean, you could maybe argue the move bombing in Philadelphia, but that was police as opposed to military planes. I didn't know that. So that just goes to show you how well this history is hidden. And that's what Ms. Fletcher was talking about.
We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. So on Thursday, President Joe Biden signed a bipartisan bill aimed at addressing the increase in attacks against Asian Americans during the coronavirus pandemic. According to NPR, at an event in the East Room of the White House, Biden thanked lawmakers for coming together to pass the legislation, he said, standing against hatred and racism, which he called the ugly position, or rather the ugly poison, that has long haunted and plagued our nation, is what brings Americans together. Biden continued to say, my message to all of those who are hurting is, we see you, and the Congress has said, we see you, and we are committed to stop the hatred and the bias. I wish you would see us.
You're absolutely right on that, though, Tammy. But I think this is an important issue.
Hold that thought, Ed. We just finished talking about a 107-year-old woman in a Tulsa massacre who is still living, is still able to tell the story, is still able to remember. She said the smells, the sounds. She visions what happened. It is not a lie. It is not fictional. It is all factual, and it is now on record. And no one's discussed what we're going to do. No one in Congress has said, you know what? We need to rectify this. That's what "we see you" means. "We see you" doesn't mean I see you. Look at you. Looking good. That is not what "we see you" means. "We see you" means we see you and we're going to rectify the problem. And that's what I tell managers when I go into a store and something wrong, and then there's something wrong. I'm like, I know you hear me. But will you rectify what this problem is I have? And this is exactly Joe Biden credit. You get mad credit for rectifying the problem, or, putting the problem in rectification, if that's a word. I created it, for Asian Americans. But I'm going back to Tulsa here. Are we going to rectify that?
Can we get an anti-lynching bill?
Tulsa. I can go back further than Tulsa. I can come closer than Tulsa. Like, a lot of rectifying has to happen here. When you see us, you need to do something about it. And that's really what "we see you" means. And I'm a little pissed off right now because Black folk we've been dancing and shouting and raising our hands and wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts and putting black boxes in the Instagram. And I mean, we've been doing all kind of stuff to be seen. But no one has put into place not one bill. No one has enacted one solution for our problems. Even the bills that have been passed traditionally with the Voting Rights Act has not been passed. Come on, y'all. Really? This is who y'all voted in. This is who y'all voted in. So go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry. I meant to cut you off there. Go ahead.
No. You did, and you and I are in thinking the same thing. I mean, I chuckled as I started, but it was out of exasperation thinking about it. When I think about the Tulsa massacre, when I think about all of the race riots, and now in the last 3 years, I mean, we've been talking about this issue of police violence against our community for decades, but the heightened conversation around it over 3 years now, and you look at how you rectify that. There's a bill, there's a proposal, the George Floyd and Policing Act, and it struggles to move forward. And I don't want to put it in such a way that as if what the president did with the anti-hate bill for Asians wasn't the right thing to do.
It was very necessary.
And I don't want to seem like it was like I'm upset that bill passed. But to your point, there's a lot of things that need to occur to do right by us, and they're not moving, and we have a right to be upset about that.
Joe Biden is in office because Black people put him there. The Asian bill was very necessary. It needs to happen, but so do other bills. Go ahead, Dominique.
Well, okay, so I agree with you guys that more needs to be done. We do need to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We need reparations. I mean, there's a long list. But I don't think it's fair to say that the Biden administration hasn't done anything for Black people. We just had this conversation on my radio show today. And let's be clear, the hate crimes bill, we're calling it an Asian American hate crimes bill, and good, that does need to happen. But that applies to anyone who's been the victim of a hate crime, which of course, African Americans are still the #1 group of people being attacked with hate crimes. So if you look at the bill, it doesn't just say this only helps Asians. It provides resources for states to deal with hate crimes, no matter who's the victim. That's #1. #2, can we talk about the $9 billion that was set aside in the, in the last bill for farmers? for black farmers specifically.
Okay,
$9 billion. That's a game changer. Can we talk about having a president who picked a black woman as a vice president? Hello. Can we talk about a president who has signed off on supporting HR 40 or whatever it's called, the most recent reparations study bill? That's never happened before. A US president supporting a study of reparations for black people. I mean, yes, he's got a lot more to do, but let's not sit here and act like President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are not aware that they have to do things for black people. I mean, what is Susan Rice's job? She's got to go and put every single program in the whole federal program in the whole country through a lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion. That's her job. So let's not act like they're not doing anything.
I mean, I agree with you, Dominic, but this was less about what the Biden administration, this is really more about the country and, you know, what the country is doing to rectify the hate that flows from the majority in this country. We saw this after 9/11 when hate sprung up against those from the Middle East. We've seen it crop up now again after COVID in response to Asians. And then it just, there is this violent reaction really from those that the party on the right, that, you know, I think you can put, you can identify a party where their political power rests. And the response is violence towards others. And the notion of us being Americans and sort of the melting pot or the salad bowl, however you want to describe our American culture, is always put at risk by that. And that's what we're talking about. So less at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but us as a country.
I think that's
not only that, I also believe that, you know, I believe that it was bipartisan because it had nothing to do with black people on the front page. You know, when you say George Floyd, the George Floyd Act, or when you say the John Lewis bill, it immediately dictates, oh, this is for black people. This is something for black people. Well, I think that was problematic in itself too.
I would disagree, Tammi, with two characterizations. One, Ed just decided that Republicans were responsible for the whole history of political violence in this country. That's simply not true. And again, when you're talking about what happened after 9/11, it was a Republican president, George W. Bush, who was very clear to say that we should not retaliate against people who come from the Middle East. Now, did everybody listen? Obviously, they did not. But to suggest that Republicans are comfortable and supportive of violence against brown people of any kind is also wrong. Also, we elected women who are Asian American and come from Asian descent in this country who were Republicans this past cycle. Another demonstration of how our party is not what it purports to be. Now, to the point that you're making before, again, I think it's important that when we look at this particular bill, it was a bipartisan bill, which means that there were issues in it that Republicans could support. The other two bills that you mentioned are large federal takeovers, particularly in the John Lewis bill with regard to voting. In the George Floyd Act, that bill doesn't have support with Republicans because of how it deals with qualified immunity. Again, you can talk about the policy issues, but I think what we can do is look at the fact that this bill is bipartisan. Then we can ask Senator Tim Scott, Representative Val Demings to do the same thing with policing so that we can get good bipartisan pieces of legislation as it relates to our community. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. At least I hope the federal government can, so they can do both. I think this is a step that shows that they can if they really work towards it.
But that bill is it doesn't have a lot of teeth, Dr. Oleka. I mean, so that's what you're saying. We need a toothless policing bill and a toothless voting rights bill so that Republicans can agree to it?
Well, one, again, and you and I have this disagreement. I think it's just a philosophical one in terms of how deeply the federal government should play with regard to state elections. But I think with regard to policing, no, I don't think it needs to be toothless. But what I do think is that if you can start in a bipartisan fashion, then you can go from there. It's not perfect. It's not immediate. But it does work, and it demonstrates that if you actually are serious about the issue, which I think we both agree that Senator Scott and Representative Demings are, then that's a place to start, and that can be a way to.
I'm not clear that Senator Scott is.
Yeah.
He won't even deal with the fact that we have racism in our country. And to me, passing a bill just to say you passed a bill that really doesn't do anything is not success.
Well, we disagree about Senator Scott and how he feels about this issue. I think he's spoken about it pretty plainly. But again, I think bipartisan is where you start and you get the best that you can, and then you keep going from there.
We're going to go here to a commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. I hate to end the show on a Friday on a sad note, but a sad note it is. Alicia, we're going to give you the last word on this because you're probably closest in terms of the career path that you've taken. So we know that you can take us out on a lighter note, but comedian, legend, icon Paul Mooney passed away on Wednesday from a heart attack at the age of 79. He's best known for writing for Richard Pryor, notably the word association sketch from season 1 of Saturday Night Live in 1975. He wrote for Sanford and Son, Good Times, as well as the first season of Living Color, and also for The Chappelle Show. Let's talk about Paul Mooney, because I know you also knew him well, Dominique.
We're going to me. Okay, I love Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney was an intellectual. He was a trailblazer. He was hilarious. And he was my friend. The very first radio interview I ever did when I came to LA, he was always bringing me presents. He brought me a black media Barbie doll, complete with her own camera and changeable wigs. And he was always telling me, you can do it, and just so proud of me as a black woman to be able to be on the air in the media. And, rest in peace, Paul. What a genius.
Dr. Oleka.
I knew Paul Mooney from The Chappelle Show. That was where I first heard of him. Incredibly funny man, incredibly inspirational. And it's sad to see him go, but it is very thankful that he had the career that he had to inspire so many people like Alicia to get involved in the comedy game.
Ed?
Yeah, just respect, right? For us as a community, comedians hold a special spot in our hearts. And when you start thinking about the greats, the Richard Pryors, the Eddie Murphys, there are certainly those that had the commercial success, the HBO shows, the big time shows. What I love about Paul's career is the respect is there. And so, you can go into other quarters and folks might not know who he is. But Paul is is one of the titans of comedy. And so a lot of respect to him. I hope a life well lived and may he rest in peace.
My first meeting of Paul Mooney, I was hosting a show that he was on, and a live show. He was doing his stand up, and I was hosting that show. And we were walking back to his trailer, and a black man came up to him and was like, "Yeah, oh man, I know you." And Paul Mooney said, I can't really say what Paul Mooney said, but he was like, mother, you know who I am. and he turned to me and he said, don't ever let a ninja. I'm trying to think in my mind how to censor it. Don't ever let a ninja pretend like they don't know you. That mother know exactly who I am. I was like, I'm kind of scared to talk to you now, Paul. I was shooketh. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't want to ask. Like, I knew exactly who Paul Mooney was, and I wanted to soak up all this information when we got to his trailer, because that's where he was resting between the shows. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get all this information. And then after he said that to that dude, I was like, I don't think I should ask no question.
Right.
Don't ever let a ninja act like he don't know who you are. Alicia, you obviously inspired by many comedians, but Paul Mooney, can you talk about him as we celebrate the legacy of his life and what he meant to Black Hollywood and to Hollywood in totality? And
woo, man. Paul Mooney was just in a class by himself. We know about Richard Pryor, we know about Eddie Murphy, but he wrote for them. So, a lot of people don't realize that some of the funniest things that they said came from Paul. The man was just a genius, and he was fearless. And I always tell people, if I don't give a F about your feelings was a person, it would have been Paul Mooney. because he don't care who he cussed out. Like, this man was so hilarious. I mean, and it's a trip because one of the guys, I think his name was Lee something. He was one of the black guys who put up the power fist, and Lee Evans in 1968 at the Olympics. Lee Evans died the same day Paul Mooney died. Nobody realized it because, like I always say, don't die when somebody bigger than you dies, because you was gonna get swept under. People don't even remember that Farrah Fawcett died because Michael Jackson died at the same time. So poor Farrah Fawcett just got wiped down the road. But Paul, let me tell you what he would have said if he saw you, Tammy. He'd be like, "Oh, Tammy, you got rid of the locks. You must be trying to get a promotion." Because when the hair is relaxed, white people relax. When the hair is nappy, they are not happy. So we know Tammy about to make the big bucks in 2021. She got the right hair.
I won't even know who you peasants are.
Won't even know. What do you say? White people got the complexion for the protection.
Yeah, I'm about to cross over big time. Another thing Paul Mooney always said was there are many stars, but only one moon. I'll leave you on that tonight. Thank you for being here the entire week. Until Monday, everybody, it's a blessing to be in your box on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul.